So let's not beat around the bush, man. To challenge the heliocentric model of the solar system is pretty blasphemous in today's world. So how do we start to unravel some of this stuff? What are some of the biggest red flags with our traditional understanding that should start putting those first cracks in the listener's preconceived notions?
Sure. Well, just our common sense everyday perception of the Earth, it is flat as far as we can tell. It is motionless as far as we can tell. And everything in the sky is revolving around us as far as we can tell. If nobody told us otherwise, we'd logically assume that the Earth was flat, motionless, with everything in the sky revolving around us. And you can prove that this is the case as well, for instance, with the horizon. As you rise up, no matter how high you go on the top of Mount Everest, or if you go in a balloon higher and higher, as far as 20 miles up and higher, we've gotten independent balloons have gone up with cameras. The horizon remains flat all the way around and rises to the eye of the camera all the way up. Now, if the Earth were a ball, no matter how big, the horizon is said to be the curvature of the ball. So as you rose up, the horizon would stay where it was, and you'd have to look down if you're in a hot air balloon, down further and further as you rose up, and the horizon would be below you. But in fact, as high as any non-NASA, RASA, or other Freemasonic space agency has ever shown us, as far as any independent camera has ever gone up with an independent rocket or balloon, as far as 20 miles up, totally flat and rises to the eye of the observer. So that's one proof. Of course, you can measure curvature if it actually existed. They say the ball Earth is 25,000 miles in circumference, and using spherical trigonometry, it figures out to 8 inches of curvature per mile squared. The mile is squared, so for 2 miles, it would be 2 times 2, 4 times 8 inches, 32 inches. And for the third mile, it's 3 squared, which is 3 times 3, 9 times 8 is 72. So you're going 8, 32, 72, 128 inches, and so on. And this is the kind of curvature that would exist on a ball, and specifically on a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, as they say it is. So you can check with theodolites and telescopes and different methods, lasers, to see if the Earth actually does have that curvature. And it's been tested over and over again and found to have no curvature whatsoever. So I mean, even if they had the number wrong and it was 100,000 miles in circumference, there would still be a calculable, measurable curvature that just isn't there. The only place curvature exists is in NASA photos and videos, and those can be proven to be CGI fakes, and the early ones were literally taken through a round window to make the Earth appear round. And that's it. It's just photo trickery and brainwashing that's got the world thinking that we're on a ball spinning around the sun with a magical force called gravity holding us on the underside of this spinning ball. It's all just brainwashing that we've received. It's pseudoscience accepted as legit science. But real science has confirmed geocentricity in the flat Earth for thousands of years. The flat Earth was known to ancient cultures all over the world for thousands of years, and it's actually a relatively recent phenomenon that people have been believing we're on a big ball spinning around the sun. Pythagoras first came up with it about 2,500 years ago. He's also often considered the first Freemason, and it didn't go anywhere much from there until 2,000 years later. Copernicus picked up where he left off, another Jesuit Freemason, and he really picked things up, and Kepler and Galileo and Newton, and now Einstein and NASA, Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and all these people, they're all part of this Freemasonic club that is building a pseudo-scientific worldview to indoctrinate the slave class so that we can be propagandized into doing anything. This is basically the biggest thing you could possibly lie about. So the psychopaths who control society are interested in world domination. The best way to brainwash the whole world is to lie to the whole world about what the world is. What is the earth under your feet? What is in the sky above your head? Where did we come from? You know, it's now, this lie has now evolved into a Big Bang evolution, heliocentric spinning ball cosmology, when in reality we're not a cosmic accidental sneeze, nothingness turned everything. This is quite obviously intelligently designed, this thing we're experiencing here, this life, this universe. I can't believe anyone in their right mind can look me in the eyes with a straight face and say, no, man, it's all random. This is all just random. But people do.
Let me begin by asking you, Eric, first the idea of a flat Earth. I mean, that was sort of the predominant theory up until, Aristotle in around 300 BC talked about the Earth being a spheroid. But how did this idea become resurrected? Bring us up to speed on sort of the modern day flat Earth society.
Yeah, throughout history, all around the world, the flat, motionless Earth was a given. It was known until around 500 BC. Pythagoras was the first one to come up with the spinning ball model. And as you mentioned, Aristotle later came up with some more proofs, in quotations, for the spinning ball model. It didn't really pick up speed, though, until around 1500s when Copernicus wrote his book. And then with the Newton and Galileo, it picked up more speed, and now with NASA, you can't find anybody that believes the Earth is flat. Everyone believes that it's a spinning ball. And that word belief is pretty interesting when you look at this, because you say, I believe that we're on a flat Earth, but in fact, I see that I'm on a flat Earth, and I feel that I'm on a motionless Earth, and I see that everything in the sky revolves around me. I also see that the sun and the moon are the same size. But I've been brainwashed to believe something very different from what I see. I've been brainwashed to believe that the completely flat horizon that I always see curves at some point. I've been brainwashed to believe that the motionless Earth that I feel beneath my feet is actually spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. I've also been brainwashed to believe that the stars, sun, and moon that clearly spin overhead are actually, some of them we're spinning around, and there's this big spiral motion of planets and galaxies all spiraling, as NASA has told us. They also tell us that the sun is a big ball of burning light, and it's 400 times further away and 400 times bigger than the moon. Yet when I look out in the sky, I can see them to be both the same size. So, in fact, what we believe nowadays is based on something contrary to our common sense and experience, and actually comes from philosophers like Aristotle giving us supposed proofs of a ball Earth, and NASA, Photoshop, CGI divisions giving us fake pictures, making us believe otherwise. But if we were just given to our own devices, everybody would be a flat earther, because that's how it is. It's flat, it's motionless, everything in the sky revolves around us. And that common sense perspective actually has been experimentally proven as well, many, many ways. My book has over 200 proofs. There's a book in the 1800s called 100 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe.
That was based on something called the Bedford Level Experiment. Now, we're coming up on a break. What was that, the Bedford Level Experiment? Do you recall?
The Bedford Level Experiment was an experiment by Samuel Rowbotham, who was another flat Earth author in the 1800s. And it was basically an experiment to test if the natural physics of water are as they appear to be, that water finds and remains level. And if that's the case, then we couldn't possibly be on a spinning ball Earth, because all the water, the oceans of the Earth would have to be curved. Yet we know that the natural physics of water is to find and remain level. So on the Bedford level there, it's just a really long canal stretch of straight water that you can do different measurements to figure out if there actually is the supposed curvature that they say there is in the Earth.
Give us your best shot at explaining to someone who's never heard this before why this theory has potential or could be true.
Sure. When they first started explaining it to me in school, I do distinctly remember raising my hand and not understanding how the spinning ball Earth would keep people and the oceans from falling off the bottom, right? And they tried to explain gravity, and, okay, I'm shaking my head and writing down the answers, and, over time you see the NASA images and you just go along to get along, but It was always a nagging doubt in my mind. So I brought that into my 20s when I started actually got into conspiracies with 9/11 as well. That was the first kind of breakthrough, unplugging me from the Matrix kind of event that got me into the whole conspiracy scene in the first place. So I definitely learned how to suspend judgment while you look at evidence, like you were talking about. And you got to do that for this flat Earth thing, because you think you've got so much evidence and proof, and that the Earth is a spinning ball. You've seen it from NASA. You've heard some proofs that your teachers have given you. You've seen the globe on the desk for years. But in fact, the horizon, for instance, is always completely flat, and you don't feel any motion. So if you were just born today and looked out, you wouldn't assume that you're standing on a spinning ball. You'd assume that you were on a flat, motionless plane. So to assume that we are on a spinning ball is actually contrary to our common sense and our everyday experience. And there's also experiments that have been done to test whether we're on a spinning ball or not. For instance, amateur balloons have been sent up past 20 miles, amateur rockets as well, and the horizon rises all the way up with the camera up to 20 miles up, and it's flat all the way around. Now, in NASA images, they claim to be hundreds and hundreds of miles up, and then you start to see curvature. But if you notice, these images are often clearly CGI, computer graphic images. Sometimes not so clearly. Sometimes the earlier ones were actually done through a round window. So they've used many different tricks throughout the years. But NASA is essentially Hollywood, and all the images that you think you've seen of a spinning ball Earth are faked. And all the amateur balloon and rocket footage that we've sent up there shows a flat horizon that rises all the way up. And that's impossible on a ball. No matter how big a ball is, as you rise up, you would have to look down to be able to see the horizon. The horizon would not rise up with you. That's a characteristic of an extended flat plane. And it's, when you're in an airplane, you can see out both windows, and you can see the horizon at eye level at 35,000 feet and higher, out both windows. But think about it. If you're on a ball, over a ball, no matter how big that ball is, you shouldn't be able to see the horizon out your plane window. Now, some people think that they see the curvature of the ball out their plane window, but in fact, they're just seeing the curvature of the glass, because the windows are all slightly curved to fit with the fuselage. And when you look at the horizon through a window like that, it does give a slight effect. And GoPros and traditional cameras, wide-angle fisheye lenses, they also give this kind of effect. So a lot of footage you'll see of the horizon, it'll warp, and sometimes it'll be convex, sometimes it'll be concave, but as the camera stops moving and stops tilting, it will always pan out to completely flat and on level with the camera. Again, this is just impossible on a ball. It doesn't matter how big the ball is. The ball could be 10 times larger. They tell us it's 25,000 miles in circumference. Even if it was 25 million miles in circumference, if you're above it, you're above it. You would have to look down to the horizon. But you just never will on the Earth, the actual Earth. So the horizon proof is one obvious one, a go-to. Another one is just the natural physics of water. It's the natural physics of water to find and remain at level. If water is dammed up and then released, it will flow out in all directions until it becomes level again. But on a spinning ball Earth, we would have to have oceans that were hundreds of miles of curved water. And this is impossible. I mean, they can't show you any example of this happening, but they claim this is what's happening on the Earth. And then they claim that there's a force called gravity that holds these oceans in just so, that it's strong enough to hold the oceans in, but weak enough to allow, bugs to take off and smoke to rise out a chimney. So the magical force of gravity, which was created by knighted Freemason Sir Isaac Newton, is basically their go-to answer there that explains away anything they have a problem with. Gravity is what they say caused the Big Bang somehow. Gravity is what formed the planets and the sun. Gravity is what causes the planets to orbit around the sun and moons to orbit around planets. Gravity is what causes the water to stick to the planets. Gravity is what causes the tides from the moon. You name it, gravity does it, as far as they're concerned. But in the flat Earth model, gravity is just density or buoyancy. In other words, an object in a medium, depending on their relative densities, will float or sink based on the friction between the two. So whether it's a gas, liquid, or solid, dense things sink and light things float. There really is an up and down in nature. They try to tell us that everything's a ball, and so up and down is an illusion. People in Australia are hanging upside down, and they don't know it. So that's another philosophical impossibility they kind of get us to believe by thinking that gravity sucks everything into the center of the ball and holds us under the ball. Meanwhile, gravity causes planets to orbit around us. So like I said, when they want to, gravity causes some things to stick to and we could become central, and sometimes it causes them to orbit things. Sometimes it causes big bangs, apparently. Gravity's a big catch-all term for whatever they want it to be.
Am I right on that I heard that gravity really has never been proven? Like, what did they say gravity is? Like, do they even have like some sort of model, or is it just a word?
Yeah, they've got plenty of calculations, and you can look at Wikipedia, and they've got pages of complex mathematics that I have no idea what it means, and supposedly it all has to do with gravity. But again, in actuality, everything can be explained through density and buoyancy without assuming that there's this magical pulling force that pulls things towards the center. They call it a mutual attraction of masses, and that a mass, by virtue of its mass alone, causes this force called gravity, which causes other smaller masses to orbit or stick to those larger masses. But they can't actually show you any example in nature where this happens. They can't show you some object that's so massive. Why can't they create some CERN, massive thing that's so massive and dense enough that they could at least cause a dust bunny to gravitize around it? They can't create any sort of experiment to prove that this gravity exists, but yet it's their catch-all explanation for everything that they can't explain. So really, the science that people think is so solid that we've been believing with gravity and astronomy and the whole Big Bang cosmology with billions of planets and stars and suns and all this is all science fiction. What's actually going on is we're on a flat plane. I don't know how far the flat plane goes. That's still a mystery. But the sun, moon, stars, all the celestial bodies rotate around us. And this has been proven, too. Since the 1800s, they've done experiments. You can look up Airy's failure is one. George Airy put water in a telescope to slow down the starlight coming in, and comparing it with control telescopes, you're able to see whether it's the starlight that's moving over us relative to a stationary Earth, or is it the moving Earth rotating under a relatively stationary star. And this and many other experiments by Michelson, Morley, Gale, Sagnac, and some others in that time proved that the celestial objects in the sky are all revolving around us, and we are completely still. Those conclusive findings, however, were philosophically debunked by Einstein and his relativity theory, where he banished the absolute ether to absolute relativity and said that you can't determine what is the most central thing in the solar system, and even what is moving around what, essentially, because everything is moving and everything is relative to everything else, and we don't know where the center or the edge of the universe is. So this like absolute relativity is what I call it. It's a paradox, but through this philosophical paradox of absolute relativity, they banished these conclusive experiments that prove that the Earth is stationary and everything's revolving around us. Since then, we've had planes that can prove even further that the Earth is stationary, helicopters as well. You'd think if the Earth was revolving under us, you could just hover up in a helicopter and the Earth would revolve underneath, and then you could land when your destination got to you. But of course, they tell us that the magic of gravity holds the atmosphere to the spinning ball too, and so, relatively speaking, you're moving with the ball. Okay. But they've done experiments with projectile cannons as well as planes taking off in all cardinal directions. And if the Earth was spinning 1,000 miles per hour eastward, as they say, and the average commercial airliner goes about 500 miles per hour, your eastward destinations should come up behind you long before you ever reach them. That's just a fact of this. But it's not the case that going in any direction changes the resistance or speed of a airplane. So, and you can imagine how difficult it would be to try to land on a runway that was going at 1,000 miles per hour. Pilots land at all 360 degrees. If the Earth was actually spinning tilted 23 degrees on its axis like that, the only way it would be able to come in on the runway would have to be on very specific angles, otherwise it would be totally off. But again, they just tell you the magic of gravity and the Velcro of the atmosphere somehow makes it so that that's all negligible. Another thing they say is negligible is that, if the Earth was a ball and you're flying over it, you'd have to descend gradually to stay at the same altitude. But it's not the case. Whenever pilots are flying, they go up to their desired altitude, they level off, and their artificial horizon remains level, and they just keep on going until they're ready at their destination and ready to come down. At 500 miles per hour, they would actually have to descend approximately a half a mile every minute just to stay at the same altitude. And this just doesn't happen. If the Earth was a ball and they didn't descend, after a half hour you'd be out into outer space just from going straight, right? Right. Now, gravity doesn't exist. Gravity is just their catch-all term for what they can't explain. So they say that the reason that the oceans, buildings, and people don't fall off the underside of the ball Earth is because of gravity. It holds us on. They say the reason that you don't feel the 1,000-mile-per-hour spinning atmosphere going eastward all the time is because gravity pulls the atmosphere along with the spinning ball Earth just so perfectly so you don't feel it. They say gravity causes the moon to orbit the Earth and the Earth to orbit the sun, and gravity actually is what caused the sun and the moon and the Earth and everything to form in the first place in their materialistic cosmology, where they try to get rid of God and they use gravity instead, another G word, and gravity is actually what created the planets and the sun and the moon and everything, and gravity caused the Big Bang, and gravity pulls the ocean's tides. Interesting how gravity supposedly pulls the ocean's tides, but it can never reach the lakes, ponds, marshes, and other bodies of water, can it? It just pulls the oceans. Nice. Gravity, that's gravity for you. But in reality, everything that nowadays is explained through gravity was already explained adequately through the laws of density and buoyancy. So if you drop a feather and it slowly floats to the ground, or you drop a brick and it drops right to the ground quickly, or you fill up a helium balloon and it rises, or you fill up a hydrogen balloon and it rises even faster, this is all based on density and buoyancy. It has nothing to do with gravity. Gravity is this fictional pulling force that they say pulls us to the center of the ball Earth and keeps us from falling off of it. But they can't actually show you any example of some mass, by virtue of its large mass alone, causing other masses to stick to or orbit around it, as they claim gravity, this force gravity does. So gravity was given to us by a knighted Freemason, Sir Isaac Newton, who just took the pre-existing laws of density and buoyancy and applied it to the budding heliocentric spinning ball model. And that's what we're taught in schools nowadays. The whole education system is teaching us not to believe our senses. Like the model they show, the ball Earth model with a crust on the outside and the outer mantle and the inner mantle and the outer core and the inner core. Guess what? They've only ever dug 8 miles down into the crust, so they don't even know what's beneath that. It took them almost 30 years to get there, and they couldn't get any further in the Russian Kola Ultra Deep, it's called. So it's all speculation as to these layers of the ball Earth they claim exist, and it's the inner layer of molten magnetic core, whatever they claim, creates the magnetism of the Earth. And so this is another funny thing. They claim that the core that we've never gotten to, so they can't be confirmed existed, causes a magnetic effect on the ball Earth, so that at one point at the top of the ball is a pole, and at the exact opposite point on the ball is an opposite magnetic pole. But this doesn't exist anywhere in nature. You can't find a sphere, and at one point on the magnetic sphere, it will cause another magnetic sphere to stick to it in that little point, and then then push away from the opposite point. It doesn't exist like that. Only bar magnets can do that. What do exist, however, are ring magnets, and those are shaped just like the flat Earth model, where the pole is in the middle, and then the opposite pole is actually every point along the circumference. So the magnetic explanation, which a lot of people will bring up, well, how does magnetism work if we're on a flat Earth? The accepted model is that it's this spinning molten magnet stuff in the core that creates this kind of north-south ball magnet, which doesn't actually exist anywhere in nature. Yet the ring magnet, which is it's in loudspeakers and other things, that's the flat Earth model, and that actually does exist. So that's an actual magnet instead of an imaginary magnet like they claim exists. And we'll actually admit that I don't know what's under the flat Earth. We've only gone 8 miles down, and we haven't gotten to the bottom of the Pacific. All I know is, as far as we can tell, the water is completely flat, and the land is flat, other than hills, valleys, and mountains over a long period of space. There's no convex or concave curvature. It's totally flat.
Now, a lot of people's first question is going to be, well, where's the edge? And I was surprised to see how easy that is to rectify, but I'm sure you get that a lot. How do you tell people when they come at you with, well, where's the edge? Why aren't people sailing off the edge or whatever?
So in the flat Earth model, the North Pole is in the middle, and the Earth is a disk shape, and the Antarctica is all the way around, holding the oceans in. And so it's a fact, if you're at the North Pole and you go south, no matter which, actually it doesn't matter where you are, if you go south, eventually you're going to end up in Antarctica. But on the ball model, it's just a little ice continent underneath the ball. Yet in this model, it's all the way around you, holding the oceans in. As for whether there's an edge beyond the Antarctic ice plateau, this wall that holds everything in is about 100 to 200 feet tall, and once you climb up on the ice wall, it's a plateau of snow that just goes on and on and on. And the public and myself are ignorant at the moment as to whether there is an edge at some point, whether there'd be a barrier, a dome, as many ancient cultures have said there is, or whether it's an infinite flat plain and it's just snow, ice, wind, and darkness forever. So that's still a mystery, how the ice actually terminates. But it is a fact that if you travel south from anywhere on Earth, you will end up at the Antarctic ice wall. The lie is that there's a South Pole, and they've put a ceremonial red and white barbershop pole with a ball Earth on top of it at an arbitrary point along the Antarctic ice. And they even admit that it's not the actual South Pole, and they have this complex model how the North and South Poles on the ball Earth are constantly moving because of the nature of the molten magnetic core of the ball Earth they claim exists. But the real reason is they have guided tours there to the South Pole, and if you took a compass and you stood at their ceremonial pole, you should be able to walk in a circle, and north would be in every direction. But of course that wouldn't happen, and so they'd have to answer to all these tourists every year as to why the South Pole clearly isn't the South Pole. And they even admit it. You can see on YouTube, and they give their complex answer as to why it's always moving and you can never really find it. Same with the North Pole. In fact, if you watch North Pole documentaries, they always claim they're at the North Pole, but they're only showing a Garmin with 90 degrees north latitude. They never pull out a compass to actually check if they're at the North Pole. They're just on some ice somewhere, could be anywhere on Earth, and then they're like 3 feet, 2 feet, 1 feet, we're at the North Pole. It's just some random ice, nothingness. So yeah, it's easy to lie about these things. And these no man's lands, the North Pole and the Antarctica, they don't allow us to independently explore them. So people like Rodney Clough or Jarl Anderhoy, independent explorers who've wanted to go to the North Pole and Antarctica without getting government pre-approval and only going with their escorts to the places they want you to go, they've actually been turned around at gunpoint by military vessels, not allowing them to go in. Jarl Anderhoy's faced jail time and fines for it as well. So they definitely don't want us exploring what is in the middle of the flat Earth and on the edges. So they tell us with this spinning ball Earth model is that the magnetism of the ball Earth happens from the molten metal core in the middle of the ball, and it causes the geomagnetic poles to constantly shift, so the north and south poles are constantly moving. So this is their perfect excuse that they can give for when people go to the South Pole and break out a compass and see that north isn't in every direction as they go around the pole. They can just say, oh, well, the pole's constantly moving, so there's no way that you can find it. And in the North Pole documentaries, they never break out a compass there either, nor do they give any star readings to prove that they actually are at the North Pole. So I'm quite skeptical of all the footage I've seen claiming to be at the North Pole or the South Pole. Whether they're actually there. They just show a Garmin, which is GPS, Global Positioning System, which is created by the U.S. military. And I'm not trusting the U.S. military just to show me 90 degrees north latitude on a Garmin, and I believe that they're where they say they are. So yeah, I have some serious questions about why people can't go to the North Pole or to Antarctica and independently explore it. Pilots are also not allowed to go over there independently. They have some polar routes, they're called, but they don't go directly over the North Pole, and nor do they ever circumnavigate under the supposed ball from one side of Antarctica to the other. They always go around. You can check for yourself on all these flights. If the Earth was really a ball and they can survive the cold of outer space, they should be able to fly a straight route across Antarctica.
Now, you were talking about the curvature of the Earth. If it's supposedly curving, the curvature is approximately 8 inches per mile.
So if it was just 8 inches per mile, it would be a downward straight slope. So you have to use spherical trigonometry. So it's actually 8 inches per mile when you square the mile after that. So there's an exponential drop over time. And you're able to measure, for instance, the Bedford experiment you were talking about was over 6 miles. The Earth should drop 16 feet. So you should be able to measure that. And it's never been measured, whether using telescopes, binoculars, flags, lasers. They've done many tests over the ages, and there's never been even the slightest bit of curvature, not even a little bit. So even if the Earth was a ball, but they got the figure wrong and the circumference was actually much, much bigger, you'd be able to measure some curvature. But there's never been any curvature measured whatsoever.
All right. What is, if the Earth is flat, we can't show people visuals, but give us a mental picture. What does this plate look like that we're all riding around on, or standing on, rather? It's stationary.
Sure.
But what does it look like, this plate?
The azimuthal equidistant projection map that the USGS actually uses is the flat Earth map. The UN logo is another example of it. The UN logo is actually a flat Earth map divided into 33 Masonic sections, by the way. But you can just type in flat Earth map on Google, and it's a disc shape. The North Pole is in the center. All the continents go out from there, and Antarctica, instead of being a ice continent on the bottom of the globe, it actually surrounds us 360 degrees. And how far that ice goes outwards is unknown at this point. So it's a cover-up. That's what the Antarctic Treaty is all about. That's why you can't independently explore Antarctica. And when people like Jarl Anderhoy try to go down there, they get turned away at gunpoint and put in prison. So there's a big cover-up there in Antarctica as well. I don't know how far the ice goes, whether there's an edge, a barrier, a dome, or infinite plane. But what we do know is that the Earth and the water is completely flat, for as far as we can see and as far as we've measured. And the horizon is completely flat, as far up as we go. All amateur rockets and all amateur balloons sent up over 20 miles, as high as they can go. The horizon is flat all the way around, and it rises to the camera all the way up, rises to the level of the camera. Now, this is totally impossible on a ball. No matter how big the ball was, as you rise up, you have to look down to see the curvature, look down to see the horizon. But what actually happens if you go up in a hot air balloon, the horizon rises right on up with you, the whole way up. Just keeps on coming up at eye level, as high as you're going to go. That's just impossible on a ball. If you think about it, if you're on a ball and you're in a hot air balloon or an airplane, you should not be able to see out your window, straight out your window, the horizon. You should have to look down, further and further down, the higher you ascend, to be able to see that horizon. But you'll never look down to the horizon on the Earth. It will always rise up to your level. Yeah, though sometimes you do see curvature, and it's because of using a wide-angle lens.
Right.
For instance, on the Red Bull dives that Felix Baumgartner did that everybody has seen, if you notice, the outside cameras are clearly wide-angle lens, and then there's an inside cockpit camera that isn't. And as you're watching it from the outside cameras, you'll notice that the supposed curvature of the ball Earth starts really early on, just as he's lifting off. And the exact same curvature stays exactly the same all the way up to the point where he's going to jump. So the curve is the same, but his altitude has risen by many, many miles. The reason the curve is the same, of course, is because it's a wide-angle lens effect. It's not actually the curve of the horizon. It just seems that way.
Right.
And that's proven by the inside camera, which, as the door opens, you can see the horizon out that inside camera. It has risen to the eye of the camera. As I said, on a ball Earth, you wouldn't open that camera and have the horizon right at eye level in front of you, no matter how big the ball was. That effect can only happen on a flat plane. And you can see in that dive shot that the inside camera, the horizon is completely flat. Mm-hmm. Then it goes to the outside, and you got a huge curve. But when you're looking at some of the amateur balloon footage, some of it's lens corrected, and it's completely flat. And others, like the GoPro stuff, the horizon will fluctuate as the camera spins and tilts. The horizon will go convex and concave, but whenever it's still, it will level off at completely level. And you can see that the convex and concave the images are just a lens effect. It's obviously not the horizon shifting every 2 seconds as the camera jumps.
Yeah.
And when it's still, you can see all the way up, totally flat. Yeah, so for instance, people will usually come at you with, well, what about circumnavigation? That's one you learn in school. We can circumnavigate the globe, so it must be a globe. You can go all the way around it. So if the Earth was flat, you couldn't go around a flat Earth. But the flat Earth model, what we're looking at here is, imagine a disk with Antarctica being an ice ring all around it, and the oceans being held in, and the North Pole at the middle. So with this model, circumnavigation just means east to west, like a compass point. Set it in the middle, you can trace a circle. And Magellan's journey, for instance, basically was that, with a few inlets and outlets along the way. All he did was go around from east to west, the flat Earth. This doesn't prove that you're on a globe or a flat Earth either way. It can go either way. So basically, the circumnavigation proof is not a proof at all. It could happen regardless of whether the Earth was flat or a ball. Another scientific proof that they'll come at you with is that ships, as they're disappearing on the horizon, as they get further and further away, the bottom, the hull, will start to disappear before the masthead. And so what's happening is it's slowly going over the curvature of the Earth. It's going over the ball. And this is Aristotle used this. This has been a proof of the ball Earth for a long time. The ball Earth has been theorized back as far as Pythagoras 2,500 years ago, but it didn't really pick up steam until 500 years ago. But so anyway, yeah, this one is one they use a lot. But in actuality, if you use binoculars, a zoom camera, a telescope, after the ship has completely disappeared over the horizon, you can bring it completely back into view, proving that it hasn't descended over a wall of convex water, but in fact it's just gone beyond your perspective. The horizon line is not the curvature of the ball Earth as you're told. The horizon line is the vanishing line of perspective from your point of view. And that's why as you raise altitude or on a clearer day or with a zoom camera, you're able to see further and further along the horizon. It's not a fixed point as it would be on a ball, as they tell you. So again, this is another supposed scientific proof of the ball Earth, but when you do experiments yourself with a telescope, you can see that that's bunk, and in fact, you've proven the opposite.
And just, I know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be devil's advocating, watching this. So I'll do it for them because I've asked these questions as well. So my question was, why, if it's a flat Earth, why couldn't you stand on the coast of California with a telescope and see Japan or Hawaii or something? And I think you know the answer to that. I'll let you answer that.
Yeah. You can't see an unlimited distance, regardless of whether the Earth is flat or a globe. And the lowest layer of the atmosphere is the densest and not transparent. So if you imagine like a hot, humid day, the haze over a road, all telescopes will eventually blur out in that same kind of way due to the air. So no, you can't see an infinite distance. And the reason people think this, again, is they think that when they point their telescopes up, that they're seeing starlight from trillions and trillions of miles away, because that's what they've been told by NASA. Now, in fact, you can measure with sextants and plane trigonometry how far away the sun, moon, and stars are, and they figure to be only a few thousand miles off the surface of the Earth. But they tell you that they're like the closest star is 25 trillion miles away, 4.2 light years away. Their science fiction term they created to make it sound more plausible. And the reason they give these ridiculously long distances to the stars is because they have to for it to fit their model. Because day after day, year after year, the fixed stars stay fixed in their constellations as they revolve over and around us. But what they say is that the Earth is spinning, and it's spinning around the sun, and the sun is spinning around the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is spinning around the known universe. And so you've got spinning upon spinning, and it's faster and faster, all these multiple spins happening. But if this is the case, you'd see movement in the stars. So the only way they can claim that you don't see movement is to use this ridiculously huge mathematics to make the math fit. So if you say the closest star is 25 trillion miles away, then you can still say that, oh, there's no parallax change between the fixed stars every year because they're just so far away. But no, you can't see that far through even the best telescope. So that's another one of the old proofs. But in fact, it's a proof of the opposite when you do it yourself. Because what happens is if you watch a boat disappearing over the horizon, as you said, the hull is going to disappear before the masthead, and people have been saying for centuries that that's because it's going over the curvature of the ball Earth. But if that was the case, then after it disappeared from sight from going over the curvature of the ball Earth, you would not be able to bring it back into sight by using, say, a zoom camera, a binoculars, or a telescope. But in fact, you can let the boat completely disappear and then train a telescope on it, and you will bring the entirety of the boat, including the hull, back into view, proving that it did not descend over a wall of convex water, And in fact, the horizon is the vanishing line of perspective from your point of view. And that's why you can zoom in on it, or if you rise in altitude, you can see more, or on a clearer day, you can see more, see further. The horizon is not the curvature of the ball Earth, as we've been told. It is simply the vanishing line of perspective, the law of perspective, as any artist would know. It's the same reason, railroad tracks seem to converge on each other off in the distance, this kind of thing. And yeah, if you look at the moon on a clear night during a waxing or waning cycle, you can see through it. Especially if you look during the afternoon, you'll notice that the supposed craters on the moon, you can see the blue sky right through those craters. Just look up, type in moon afternoon or something in Google and take a look. Or when you can see the moon sometime around 4 or 5 o'clock, when it's still, the sky is still blue, the sun's still out a little bit, but you still got the moon there, you'll notice that what is called craters is clearly not craters. And the supposed solid globe-shaped moon that they've presented us with cannot be the case, because you're seeing right through it. And even astronomers from the Royal Astronomical Association from hundreds of years ago have have written periodically having seen stars and planets through the moon. So like the popular Islamic flag and the symbol you see on mosques, for instance, with a crescent moon and a star occulting it, that actually happens. You can see that happen. So the moon, it appears, is its own unique light. It's semi-transparent and self-luminescent, whereas they tell us it's a spherical terra firma body that reflects sunlight. But you can prove that this is not the case, and that the sun and the moon are actually the same size as they appear. That's another thing. We were talking about things that you can see with your eyes, but then are told to be different by so-called science. They tell us the sun is 400 times bigger and 400 times further away than the moon. And from our faulty parallax perspective, we just see them appearing as exactly the same size. But no, one's really big and really far away. But if you're just using your own eyes, you would see that they are the same size. And the horizon is flat, and the Earth isn't moving, and everything in the heavens does revolve around us.
Does that then preclude the existence of other spheroid celestial bodies? Does that mean that all planets are flat, or are we the only sort of plate?
Right. Well, we're a plane, not a planet. So all they did was add a T to the end, and everybody bought it. But in reality, Earth is the only physical plane, and everything above us is just a light. So there is no spherical terra firma ball planets like Mars, Jupiter, and all these things that NASA presents us with. The moon landing was fake, and it's done here on Earth. The Mars footage is fake, and then done here on Earth. All the CGI images you've ever seen of all these planets, you'll notice that there is no actual footage. Type in real planet footage or something along those lines in YouTube, and you'll not find a single real video of a planet. And when you look at planets through amateur telescopes, they just look like flat, circular disks of light, just like stars. And in fact, for thousands of years, they were called stars. They're called the wandering stars, as they differ from the fixed stars in their relative motions only. The fixed stars stay completely fixed together in their constellations day after day, year after year, millennia after millennia, which is another proof that we're not on a spinning ball going all around the galaxy like they tell us, because Polaris, the North Pole star, stays exactly where it is, right above us, and all the other stars rotate in a dome-like planetarium shape eastward in a 24-hour cycle all around us. And the wandering stars, so-called, because they kind of wander their own unique paths, they're still in a general motion. They do a kind of a spirograph pattern around the sun. So, no, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the wandering stars that are now called planets are just lights. And they light up the night sky. They give us calendrical time. They divide not only the night from the day, but the years and the months, etc. The word month comes from moon month. And it's the cycle is the same with the female cycle as well. So there's a lot of parallels between, as above, so below. That's where astrology comes from as well. When you when you propagate the spinning ball Earth model, then suddenly astrology, which was an ancient science of consciousness known to our ancestors, suddenly becomes like some stupid superstition, because how could the position of the stars over us have any significance? But if we are the only plane in existence and everything in the heavens truly does revolve around us, then that denotes a special importance to not only Earth, but to humans, the most intelligent of the intelligent designers' designs. If we're just, on the speck of God's fingernail in the corner of the universe, like NASA wants us to believe, then it's a very nihilistic, atheistic kind of view. Yeah. Well, and they also say that there's an International Space Station out there, and there's a Hubble telescope floating out there taking wonderful CGI Photoshop pictures that they send us back with their amazing 400-mile outer space internet connection to the Hubble Space Telescope. And now the internet space connection has gone to over 1 million miles with the new Rosetta mission. Have you seen that one? Mm-hmm. The CGI Photoshop pictures from that are just wonderful and well worth the billions of dollars we're spending to get them. Yeah, so the illusion is that there's a space station and satellites and telescopes just floating out there in infinite space. But you and I know that no matter how high you go, you come right back down. Whatever goes up must come down. The illusion is that at some point, if you go high enough, this gravity they claim exists that pulls you back down to the Earth, suddenly just you pop out of it and into the vacuum of space. Now, the vacuum of space can't exist because it's connected to the non-vacuum of the atmosphere in Earth and all the other supposed planets that exist. So a vacuum must be a closed system, but they claim space is a vacuum and space is an open system. So it's philosophically impossible for space to be a vacuum. And the way that they fool us into thinking that this actually is plausible is threefold. The first way they do it is in zero-G planes, which are Boeing 737s that do parabolic maneuvers that have a free fall illusion, a free fall effect rather, that happens for about a minute, where you can be floating in these planes. And that's how they get this outer space look, like you're floating in outer space. The second way is through wires, harnesses, and green screen for the longer shots. In the ISS, for instance, they do that. And the third way, for like the outside shots they do, are in pools. They're actually underwater. And this is confirmed by the fact that there's bubbles rising in the pool in a lot of their shots. And people on YouTube have dissected a lot of the ISS and other supposed space footage and all the space bubbles that are coming out of their helmets. Some people are even wearing scuba gear. They found that as well. So that they fake these zero-G illusions by being in water, by being in zero-G planes, and by being in harnesses in front of a green screen. And that makes us think that it's possible that out there in space you could just be kind of floating around like they show us in the movies. But as far as we'll ever know, as far as you or I would ever know, we go as high as we can in a plane or a balloon or a rocket, and we come right back down. Even the rockets they send up, if you're honest about it, you'll notice that they don't go straight up. All their rockets start a parabolic curve, they start to arc over, and the ones they claim are successful are the ones that go out of view before they come all the way back down. And if anybody asks, why do they always curve over like that? They just say that they're going around the curvature of the ball Earth, and they'll reach escape velocity soon. And at some point, they'll just pop right out of the gravity, and then they'll be floating, which is another problem, because if you were in a vacuum and you were using rocket thrusters or anything to thrust yourself forward, you wouldn't go forward or in any direction you wanted to. You just spin wildly out of control like a gyroscope in 360 degrees in 3 dimensions, spinning wildly. You don't go anywhere that way. So the whole idea of space travel is a big joke. It's all science fiction. Yeah, man. The second president of the International Flat Earth Research Society, Charles K. Johnson. He had his house burned down and all of his flat Earth materials, books, correspondence, his whole library, and he swore till his dying day that it was a NASA agent that did it, who also tried to kill him on more than one occasion. So there's definitely that aspect to it. They also have controlled opposition set up to defer people away from the legitimate flat Earth. So, for instance, the International Flat Earth Research Society I just mentioned was started in 1957, and in 1970 they started out the Flat Earth Society of Canada, and then they took off the word Canada right away. And this one was a satirical society set up to control the opposition, to make it look ridiculous, and they did a wonderful job. Their president, Leo Ferrari, would go on television interviews claiming to be a flat earther, but then doing ridiculous things like taking on a big rock and saying, I was just at the edge of the earth and I almost fell off. I lost all my shipmates, but I held on to this rock and I saved me. And so I just brought this here from the edge of the flat earth to show you. And he'd say things like this. And nowadays, the Flat Earth Society promotes false flat Earth arguments, such as the flat Earth disk constantly rising to account for gravity. They say instead of the force of gravity pulling us down, the flat Earth disk constantly rises up. And they claim that this is what flat Earthers believe. But as I said earlier, we don't take gravity as being real in the first place. We just take experience and experiments, the zetetic method as it's called, just common sense. You don't need to, Occam's razor, you don't need to make unnecessary assumptions and call something gravity when it's completely explained with the already existing laws of density and buoyancy. So that's characteristic of their pseudoscience that's nowadays taught as science. And when somebody presents you with ideas of a flat Earth or a geocentric system, that's thought of as ancient pseudoscience that our ignorant ancestors believed, when in fact the experiments, experience, evidence, common sense is actually on that side, and we've been fed a bill of lies, pseudoscience, for so long that we believe it to be science. Yeah, the UN flag is a flat Earth map. You can look at it. It is not a ball Earth. It's a flat Earth, and the bullseye you're talking about that's over it, if you count the number of holes they've got there in the bullseye, there's exactly 33. So what they've got is a flat Earth divided into 33 sections. And I'm sure you're aware that 33 is a significant occult number, especially among the Freemasons, who are the ones in charge of this whole deception, as I said, from all the way back to Pythagoras, the first Freemason who thought up this ball Earth theory, through Copernicus and Galileo and Newton, and right up to today, Neil deGrasse Tyson, etc. So the Freemasons in the UN, the Freemasons in NASA, these are the people who are doing this, and they put their symbology right out there by having the UN flag be a flat Earth divided into 33 sections right in our face. And meanwhile they laugh about the flat Earth. It's got to be the most ridiculed position ever. And you got to think there's a reason for that. Why is the concept of flat Earth or being a flat earther so ridiculed? I have a flat Earth comedy special I made, and you can see Obama saying over and over again the flat Earth, ridiculing them, making jokes about them in his speeches. And I mean, these aren't just off-the-cuff remarks. These are things that are being written into his speeches. So why are they doing this? Why are they making sure that people know that the flat Earth is something to be ridiculed?
So, I mean, if they're holding this secret, this would be the biggest secret possible. So are you putting Freemasons at the very top layer of this power pyramid?
No. Freemasons seem to be the foot soldiers who do all the dirty work, but they're definitely part of a grander scheme involving the Vatican and Jesuits and world royalty and other secret societies. So there's definitely a big network. I don't know. I think people like to kind of debate semantics about the tippy top of the capstone of the pyramid, and I don't know that that there even is such a thing, or if we would ever get to it from the outside. But I think it's definitely, world royalty, the Vatican, the Freemasons, and the whole secret society network of, Bohemian Grove and Skull and Bones and all these other organizations. They're all interlinked in some ways through the whole corporate, banking, military, industrial structure. The thing's pretty well interwoven. That's right. Yeah. I mean, our eyes and experience tell us the Earth is flat and motionless, and everything in the sky revolves around us. But when we cease to believe our own eyes and experience, we have to prostrate ourselves at the feet of these very pseudoscientists who are blinding us, treat them as experts, astronomical priests who have special knowledge only they can access, like the Hubble telescope. So by brainwashing us of something so gigantic and fundamental, it actually makes every other kind of lesser indoctrination a piece of cake. Earth being the flat, fixed center of the universe around which everything in the heavens revolves gives a special importance and significance not only to Earth, but to us humans, the most intelligent among the intelligent designers' designs. By turning Earth into a spinning ball thrown around the sun and shot through infinite space from a godless Big Bang, they turn humanity into a random, meaningless, purposeless accident of a blind, dumb universe. So it's like trauma-based mind control, beating the divinity out of us with their mental manipulations. People are always asking, why do they do this? Other than the obvious profit margin motive, NASA being the biggest black budget black hole in existence, sucking in over $30 billion taxpayer money for the fake moon landings alone. Nowadays, hundreds of billions of dollars, and not just NASA, but RASA and all the other fake space organizations around the world, giving CGI images for hundreds of billions of dollars. So this modern atheist Big Bang heliocentric globe Earth chance evolution paradigm spiritually controls humanity by removing God or any sort of intelligent design and replaces purposeful divine creation with haphazard random cosmic coincidence. And so by removing Earth from the motionless center of the universe, these Masons have moved us physically and metaphysically from a place of supreme importance to one of complete nihilistic indifference. If the Earth is the center of the universe, then the ideas of God, creation, and a purpose for human existence are resplendent. But if the Earth is just one of billions of planets revolving around billions of stars and billions of galaxies, then the ideas of God, creation, and a specific purpose for Earth and human existence become highly implausible. So by surreptitiously indoctrinating us into their scientific materialist sun worship, not only do we lose faith in anything beyond the material, we gain absolute faith in materiality, superficiality, status, selfishness, hedonism, and consumerism. If there's no God and everyone's just an accident, then all that really matters is me, me, me. So they've turned Madonna, the mother of God, into the material girl living in a material world. Their rich, powerful corporations with their slick sun cult logos sell us idols to worship, slowly taking over the world while we tacitly believe their science, vote for their politicians, buy their products, listen to their music, watch their movies, all sacrificing our souls at the altar of materialism.
Touche, my man.
It's a big deception. I'd say it's the biggest cover-up and conspiracy in history. We've been completely deluded for 500 years. Not everybody, but nowadays it's pretty well advanced.
Yeah.
Most of the flat Earth material you'll find still in existence is from the 1800s, and there was quite a debate going on then. So there's still quite a few people unconvinced of the spinning ball theory back then. But nowadays with NASA and all the photo and videos that they give us, people don't really look at too much further for evidence, as they assume that that's all real.